right. Yeah.
Well,
Not here. So everything for this meeting is in our, we have notebooks, but it's in your folder on CTB drive. Drive has, we'll have it on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting of the Rail and Transit Subcommittee to order. The first item on our agenda is approval of the minutes of our last meeting, which was June of last year. So it's been a while. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Mr. Foltz, do I have a second? Second by Mr. Coleman. All those in favor? All right, thank you. So next up is public comment. Do we have anybody signed up? No one signed up for public?
sure. Yeah.
People definitely care, but it is 8:30 in the morning. Like maybe that didn't have to
Middle of the day, right, Mark?
It is for me. But so we've got a full agenda for you today, so I'm gonna jump right into it. I'm gonna spend a little more time on director's report than I do in regular workshops these days. So we'll go into that. Some really great things going on within the agency, and also want to talk a little bit about performance metrics. The rest of the agenda today is we're going to give you, a preview, a lead-in on 6-year program, like where we are with our projects, and as we lead up to making a recommendation in the form of a draft 6-year program budget for next month. So we'll give you some highlights on the public transportation side and the rail side. And then we're going to end today's meeting talking about the Virginia Breeze, which continues to just do wonderfully. Yes. And we're talking about expansion. And so we've got Avery Dartrey, who's our program manager and does a masterful job running that service, here to talk about our opportunities for expansion that we're planning for later this year. So with that, do we have, or do I just need this?
Unfortunately, I'll be okay.
Jayla's my clicker.
Yes.
So I'm going to spend a little time going through the director's report this morning. Can we go ahead and go to the next one? Yes, sure.
Is this your last meeting with us?
This is not.
Oh, okay.
This is not.
I'll put my emotion to check that. Okay.
I have, I will be with you through the May board.
Okay.
What did I say? 77 days left.
Who's counting?
Got the countdown. Big summer ahead. So we, about a little over a year ago, adopted within the agency, we developed a strategic plan, and we call it Next Stop 2030. And it's really become, the pivot point for everything we do and how we communicate. And it's been great to watch the agency coalesce around something that they've developed and had a ton of input in. It is their strategic plan. It's not my strategic plan, so it lives on once I leave. But it's really become kind of our focal point. And so everything that we communicate, whether it's how we communicate with you and these monthly directors updates or our weekly update to the governor's office, everything pivots off the 4 goals of our strategic plan. Next slide. So our 4 goals: create a positive impact on the Commonwealth, foster innovative, practical solutions, convene with partners and stakeholders, and then cultivate a sustainable, well-managed organization. That's what we've been working on for a year. We had the whole agency team offsite on Thursday. I will tell you the same thing I told them. I think we've done a great job with 1 and 4. Positive impact for the Commonwealth and really cultivating the organization. We've been through a ton of transitions, spinning off a whole nother organization with the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. I would say where we have opportunities to dive in a little deeper are on those middle 2. The innovation, we've got some great stuff that we've already done, but we can do more on the innovation front. We spent a lot of time Thursday with staff really diving into what does innovation look like when you're not the people that are delivering the service, but you're guiding other folks. Yeah, that's fine. I want to give you just a few highlights. So creating a positive impact on the Commonwealth, we have objectives beneath that goal, but we've done things like work with UVA to move our Charlottesville, Virginia Breeze stop, which was out off of Barracks Road, It's now on campus at UVA, connected with transit. So that we do anticipate help drive more ridership. We're also working with our partners to expand commuter bus service from Front Royal to DC and to expand Vanderbilt. So we're still pushing forward on, how can we better meet the needs of our traveling public.
We go beyond the park and ride there. It's 40, 66.
That's what they're looking at. The park and ride's got some challenges. We had, that was our Virginia Breeze stop for a while, and we actually moved from there to a private location. Park and ride.
It's not easy like this. Not closing out and deal with so people that get rides out that area.
I'm going to talk more about our metrics and ridership later on, so I'm just going to kind of brush over that. And then we had, we see our projects, we're in these projects for the long hauls. The Commonwealth Railway Median Rail Project in Chesapeake and Suffolk. We have, contingent interest in these projects for 15 years. And that's a project that's done very, very well. That's hit that 15-year mark. Carried 3 million containers since 2008, nearly double the requirement that was outlined in the initial grant. So it's nice that we see these projects all the way through the process. And so that was one that we just felt like was notable, and we wanted to talk about that as well. So when we fund those rail projects, when we put rail funding, we hold a contingent interest in it for 15 years. They've got to meet their targets that were in their original grant application, or we fall back to fund it. But once you get to 15 years, that contingent interest is gone, but the asset obviously is still there.
Which form of rail lines?
It's Commonwealth Railway.
They own the track. It's not a CSX.
Look back here, Mike.
It's Genesee and Wyoming is the parent company, but the way that their legal entity is set up is Commonwealth Railway is its own, railroad, short line entity that owns the tracks.
So innovative practical solutions. We've been working a lot with Metro on their 2025 budget and their business plan. Our WMATA Senior Program Manager in our Northern Virginia office has been nominated to chair the WMATA Jurisdictional Coordination Committee for the next calendar year. That's a
great honor.
That's a great honor,
Yeah.
Especially for the state when you're talking about a multi-jurisdictional committee like that. Amy Garbarini, who's our planner in Northern Virginia, is chairing the TPB Technical Committee. So we, we've got really strong and very talented staff that get recognized by the region. Fostering a culture of innovation. Grant Sparks is sitting in the back. He worked on this federal grant to do some study work for Petersburg Area Transit. We were successful in obtaining its Areas of Persistent Poverty grant program with FTA. We're working with them on doing a comprehensive operational analysis for PAD, and also working with them on a couple of other big projects where they're small, and we can provide technical assistance and technical support to help agencies like PAD be successful. And our rail team is working with VDOT because we both have access to rail grade crossing funding now through 2 different sources. So we're working together to coordinate to be able to leverage those 2 fund sources where they most make sense and work collaboratively as a company. Yeah.
Just going back to the comment about the joint coordinating committee. Do they have specific powers, or are they just providing input? Because they're also representatives on WMATA's board for changes in Maryland and DC.
This is a staff committee that provides input support to those board members and really looks out for the interests of all the jurisdictions. We also work with a number of partners and stakeholders around the Commonwealth. One of the big things, again, with our rail team, there's Federal Railroad Administration and Amtrak are working on a long distance passenger rail study. And one of the routes that was included in their map includes a route from New York to Houston that goes through, basically follows our line of current service through Roanoke, but then goes on down through Southwest Virginia, Bristol, on to Chattanooga. So we worked, provided information on that, and encouraged folks in the corridor to provide positive comments back to FRA on the importance of that route. Because really rail, it's not rail to Bristol, it's rail through Bristol that makes the most sense. And so being part of that long distance and that more national study is something that is more helpful to making that work continue on than anything that we would control here solely in Virginia. We're also preparing for our triennial review from the Federal Transit Administration. We've updated our state management plan, which is a federal requirement, and make sure that we're in alignment with all the federal requirements and we're in compliance so that we can get that federal plan. And then the organization. And this is all about, how we work with each other and how, kind of that external image of DRPT. We have a long partnership with Virginia Commonwealth University graduate. We have a bunch of graduates on staff at DRPT. And so we've got a partnership with them where we periodically will bring in grad students that are working on their capstone projects, finish their, in this case, a master's in public administration. They come in, we give them kind of a challenging project, something that we want to work on that maybe we don't have time to work on. So we've got a capstone group right now that's looking at issues around fare collection and fare policy. And they'll be briefing us at the end of April, Andy.
Yes.
And it's interesting that we have two people that we know on this particular capstone group. We have someone who interned with us in communications, and we also have a former assistant secretary. So it's interesting that we see familiar faces, but then we often are able to recruit people off of these capstone teams as well. We have updated our open data portal, and this is something we rolled out about 2 years ago. I'm really excited about what we've kind of taken it to the next level, and we've done that bringing it in-house. It was something that was done by a consultant with an off-the-shelf cloud-based software that we, quite frankly, were spending a lot of money on. Really leaning into the technical capabilities of our staff and our team. They've come up with a new way to display our data graphically and in a GIS-based format. So we have a new smart scale dashboard, new performance metrics portal. And this is going to save us about $500,000 a year in consulting and IT. And we're doing it in-house. And quite frankly, I like the product even better than what we had before. Ultimately, our goal is to have all of our active projects in a similar GIS-based dashboard. But we're starting with smart scale projects, and we'll be adding this new 6-year program with the projects after that. We can board adopt that. Then again, I think I already mentioned we've got our FTA triennial review coming up, and so we are good stewards of the public resources, and just demonstrate that with a very thorough review. All right, so performance metrics. We have a good story to tell here as well. So next slide. So we've shown you these graphics many times before. I'm really excited that we ended the year with 116 million transit trips, which is well above where we have been over the past few years. We still break down kind of metro and VRE separate because those systems have kind of lagged behind the rest of the state, but are really starting to rebound as well, particularly in Lamont. I can go to the next slide because I think it's, yeah. I want to go back
to that one. Is there any variation from previous years? You look at the drop off the last quarter, October, November, December, each month is going down across all three modes. Is that typical?
Pretty typical. Pretty typical. You lose, a week or two of December. You got a lot of folks that take off holidays. From a commuting standpoint, you have the university systems have.
So this pattern falling off.
This is a very typical pattern, and we can show you. Okay, the next one.
Jim, what was VRE at its peak?
VRE.
Is it over 3 million?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
So
at
that's-
about a third. I mean, they're still well behind.
Yeah, and John, it's certainly good to see this growth recently. But I would also like to see where we are relative to pre-COVID.
So that's on this slide. It's not in the bar chart, but if you look, overall statewide, we were at 86% of our pre-pandemic, when you compare December to December. We're getting really, really close to pre-pandemic year over year, for all of the Virginia agencies who leave out Momana and VRE. We have some agencies that are well ahead of their pre-pandemic ridership. Richmond, Alexandria, and then we have others that are like Hampton Roads Transit that are still, well below when they were pre-pandemic. So it is a broad spectrum. When you see what's happening statewide, it is driven by the chunk of the agencies that are really outperforming everybody else. And then we still have some other agencies that are falling.
Why do you think VRE is so much lower compared to pre-pandemic than the other ones?
VRE is structured around a commuting pattern for the federal workforce and for the DC workforce. The federal workforce isn't back in the office in number, and the other businesses in DC have kind of followed suit. VRE runs AM peak period, PM peak period, Monday through Friday. And because of how they're structured in our slots with the rail system, we don't have a lot of flexibility. The systems that have done really well have been able to adapt and pivot. Systems like OmniRide, which, pre-pandemic was largely commuters out of Prince William County to DC. They were AM, PM. Now they've spread their service out across the day because people work patterns are different now than they were. If they go into the office, they don't want to be there from 8 to 5. They might go in at 10 and leave at 4. I mean, schedules and flexibility is something that's quite different now. And so we're working with we've worked a lot with VRE from the marketing perspective and giving them support around that, and then continue to look at options to provide, some different service options for VRE, whether that's late night or weekend. Metro is where we're seeing really the most positive movement. And a lot of that is tourism driven, but again, they're seeing, pretty significant jumps from where their trajectory of growth is much better than even the rest of the state.
Do you think the growth is due to something outside? Because I still hear comments about people not going back to work in DC. So do you know what is making up the difference? Is it a different segment of people other than workers?
Yes, and I think what you see is middle of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you see a lot more traffic on VRE commuters than you do Monday or Friday.
Okay.
What's interesting, and I've heard Randy Clark say this many times, is ridership on a Friday morning is really, really low, but ridership on a Friday afternoon into the evening really, really high because people want to get out because they've been sitting in front of the computer. So then it starts to shift what the travel patterns look like. And so I do think you get a lot more recreational trips and non-work-based trips that are driving that.
Is there any way to capitalize on that increase, double down on it?
They are working very hard. Metro is to really bring back confidence in the system. I know there's been a lot of concerns about things like fare evasion and crime. They've done a lot, particularly in Virginia, on the fare evasion side, because they've got, they've changed the fare gates, but they've also done a lot from an enforcement perspective. There are some code changes pending in DC that will bring the ability for some more fare enforcement back on the DC side. And I really think, addressing the crime systems is important. So continuing to build that confidence.
People
that
feel safe.
They do have to feel safe. Virginia Breeze, record year of ridership in 2023. I mean, to say that this outpaces our expectations is really, it really has been a gem, particularly in the I-81 corridor with the Valley Flyer and the Highlands Rhythm. That's where we see the greatest ridership. We do expect to see, a jump in ridership on the Piedmont Express with that change in the Charlottesville stop location So we continue to really actively monitor this program. We've got a lot of flexibility where we see ticket sales, particularly in the I-81 corridor and those busy travel weekends. We see the bus start to fill up and ticket sales get to that point. We'll add buses. We've run as many as we have 13.
Well, I think more than that, so we're probably close to 50.
Yeah, so
Wow.
where we're scheduled for one, if we sell enough tickets, we'll keep adding buses. And I used to say 11, and Avery kept telling me I need to go higher. So now at 15 is the new high.
It's like the old Eastern shuttle. All on bus if you. So, Jan, on
keep
the
going.
Virginia Breeze, what's our fare box recovery percentage of operating costs roughly?
Off the top of your head, Avery?
So for the entire service, we're averaging all 4 routes, we're averaging anywhere between on a given month, 35 to 50.
Yeah. Pre-pandemic with the Valley Flyer, we were dangerously close to turning pro.
In the
Which is nothing. It's
Really?
Yeah, I mean, and we've not put any state money into this until the Highlands Rhythm. We got a little bit of money out of the I-81 corridor program to kind of jumpstart that. But the rest has been done with federal money and in-kind match, where we're able to tie into National Bus Network and routes out of DC, which is something we'll talk about at expansion. So more to come on that. But Breeze continues to do well. And then we go to the last one, which is our Amtrak ridership.
Yeah.
I'll report on behalf of the Passenger Rail Authority. December was the first month we haven't broken our monthly record. If we had a number of Northeast Corridor outages and trains that were canceled in December, so I tend to think that had we not had those things happen, we probably would have had a new record in December. We did in January again, so we continue to do really well. The big story with Amtrak ridership is we did set a new annual record for 2023, and we beat the old record by 30%. So, I mean, we're not just year over year. Now, keep in mind, we added Norfolk train and a new Roanoke train midway through 2022. But continue to see just really, really good ridership trends on Amtrak Virginia.
Jennifer, to what extent is there a national bus network? For example, many years ago, the Greyhound Trailway dividing all over the Commonwealth. You could get on a bus in Lynchburg and go to Charlottesville or Richmond or Danville or Roanoke, wherever you want to go.
You don't
That's
see it
gone,
much,
right?
Yeah, and there's still long haul, and there's still Greyhound and Flix and Megabus, and you have a number of providers. But FTA, so we use some funding that the Federal Transit Administration gives us that we can use for intercity bus. And it has to have rural connections. And I'm not going to talk anymore about what you have to have because it's in this slide deck. But we're able to take credit for those folks that go on to Union Station and interline, buy a ticket through Megabus to go on to New York, Philadelphia, or wherever they're going. We get credit for that. And instead of having to match that federal money, we match it with the miles of people going outside of Virginia on with Megabus to another.
So we're not basically putting them out of business.
No.
This is great. The bus ridership is very particularly impressive.
Great. And so with that, I'm going to wrap up. So this is in your packet for today. But since we had the opportunity, I want to go a little deeper into other things going on in the organization. So up next, we have Zach Trogman to give you an update on where we are with our 6-year program on the transit side.
Great introduction. A lot of positive news thing.
Very proud of the little engine that could that steered me to get a lot done with 65 people. All right, Trogman.
Good morning.
So yeah, so we'll show you how we, structure our funding and what we provide to help get these outcomes. So pleasure to see you today. And can you do the next one, Jayla?
Mhm.
So as you all have seen this stuff before, but again, you only really talk about it once a year. So we're going to, start elementary and move on to, steadily get more and more complicated. But our program is merit, and again, fiscal year 25 would be the 6th year of the program. I mean, 6 years sounds like a long time, but again, you see the date, July 1st, 2019, and you're starting to hear now, 4 years ago, yada, 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 what happened. So, after we started the program, we had, the pandemic hit. And so it's kind of made every year, there's special challenges to deal with as well. So this year is a little better than some, but certainly we've had things. So the program itself is based on a prioritize scoring and prioritization and performance based. So it's not just something where, it depends on subjective. So it gives subjective basis. So it gives grantees some stability in what they can expect to see year over year. It is based in code, as you see, 30 and 33.2. So that is what we follow. So this year, sorry, Joe, next slide. This year we're looking at, these are just some of the draft numbers right now for what we have in the certain categories that are governed by our merit program. And so I won't go through all of them, but quickly, just to summarize real quickly, it is kind of what we call a waterfall. So we get our allocation, our total allocation, and operating is actually 24.5% of our total allocation. Capital 17% that we can devote to it. Our special programs is 2.5%. You see the transit ridership trip incentive program there is 6%, and then FTA 5310 is not actually taken out of our. That includes some federal funds, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Jayla, if you can do the next slide, please. So again, about these are just the metrics that do govern our program. So you can see it is used to try to incentivize performance, good performance. And so we want to throw good money after good performance. That has been our success model. And again, some of what you just saw, again, it's been a challenge figuring out with the upheaval that's happened over the last few years about how to do this in a way, but we've managed to come out of the pandemic well using this model as well. So now again, to provide stability, one of the big things about the program is that on operating expenses, they cannot receive more than 30%. So again, if somebody, because some of this is based on operating costs and other things. So if somebody's budget gets, grows tremendously, they're not rewarded for that. It's still supposed to be, a mix of things that really are based on they're investing in their system, but they're also getting, good outcomes from their investment. So Jayla, next slide, please. Now on the capital assistance side, that is where we also use that's where our prioritization, scoring and prioritization really comes in, handy as well. That's a huge part of the program because capital projects are just as important as the operating in some respects, because it does lay your infrastructure for your agency. So three major parts to our capital assistance programs. You see there, state of good repair is the main one. That is what what is the percentage we have? 80%. 80% of our, we have go towards that particular thing. So again, we are incentivizing that you're taking care of your existing assets. You're not, building bridges to nowhere and stuff like that just because you get the money for it. So, but then of course we also want to allow for expansions and enhancements of services and facilities and things like that. So those, but again, state of good repair is the largest priority out of this program, which is good stewardship, as we talked about earlier in our strategic plan. Jayla, come to the next slide. Won't go down too far into this, but this is simply to just give you an idea of how we score and prioritize these projects. And the first two things there that you see, one of them has a total of up to 60 points, one up to 40. Those are pretty objective criteria. And the incentive score is something where we are able, if an agency is good at delivering projects, they're pursuing some innovative things, for instance, we are able to also reward that and to provide some more, a higher score for that. you know, it also gives them, again, it's all about incentives for these folks. So this has worked out well for us. And so, you know, projects for state of good repair, you know, we score it, run down the thing, a huge Excel spreadsheet, got to have people good at Excel to pull this off. So that's a very important skill. Yes, sir.
So in the incentive score category, do we have any examples of where we've given the incentive for zero emissions technology?
I mean, yeah, I'd have to look up specific examples, but certainly we've you know, tried to fund if it's chargers or even, you know, some transition. We have our own study we've done about moving to some hybrid or electric fleet. So I'd have to come up with specific examples. Yes, we do look at that if somebody's pursuing that, but you know, again, they have to be able to deliver. The other part of that is they have to be showing a pattern of delivering projects also, because those are expensive and those can get hung up. So so yeah, but certainly we look at that, but also we don't want to see somebody has 4 of them out there because they want to do the right thing, but they need to be able to deliver it too. So yeah, but it's certainly a lot of people asking for those things. A minor enhancement similar. You see, there's not as many scoring categories as there are for state of good repair, but again, we sort of are using the same criteria. And same thing, we want to, you know, folks that are, you know, agencies that are doing good at delivering projects and looking out for their customers and things like that, also can get some incentives. Jayla, next slide. For major expansions, if you all recall, this was all around the same time. I don't know, is that correct? Say it all around the same time as Smart Scale?
It was a
So,
little after.
Yeah, a little after. So we, you know, Smart Scale was a good model. It had revolutionized the way the state funded transportation projects. So, you know, we wanted to use that successful model. And so these are the similar, you all know about Smart Scale and the things here, right? Over last year. So I don't need to get too far into it. But again, so this also guides our major expansion when we look at those, and we only get a couple of those a year. So, but what we do, they are high dollar, obviously. So, but these are the types of things we apply to those. So,
And I would just say, same factor areas as Smart Scale, but transit focused metrics that we use.
Why do you have 100% for everyone? Not sure how I'm following if it's 100% for everyone.
So
Six factors.
So each factor, some of the factor areas have more, like accessibility, there's 2 measures. Other than that, for the other factors, it's just 1 measure. 100% of that particular measure, all the factor areas are weighted equal.
yeah, this is quite different from other categories.
It's not as complex.
This is not measure of the total percentages.
Correct.
Okay.
This is
Correct,
not
yes,
any-
correct,
This
right.
is much more, we started out with a typology that was very much like Smart Scale and very complicated. And as Zach said, we scored maybe 2 to, the
Right.
most we've done in a year is like 5 projects that go through this. And so we have really simplified it.
It's not a roll up. It's not a roll up like the other.
So it's a measure at 100%.
Of
That's
that factor.
correct, correct. Jayla, can you see the next slide, please? Thank you. So just to give you an idea of what we are investing in these programs right now. We talked about the operating program got about 116 million. So this is, and the types of requests we are getting. So we had, you see there, 430 projects. So, you know, out of that 113 million, so a lot of that is state funding, but we do also leverage federal funding that the state receives from the feds to also go toward those projects. So, you know, that just allows us to also be good stewards. And so, again, our majority of ours is state of good repair. So you can see that in the numbers there. Jayla, the next slide, please. So special is again, that gets only about 2.5% of our allocation, our total allocation. But this is where we're able to do things. Can I use the term outside the box? Has that been worn out? Innovative, sorry.
There you go.
And so we're able to do, you see their demonstration projects. We're able to fund studies, you know, which again is to study something. So it may or may not be a good idea. That's why they're studying. So this is not, you know, it's a tremendous amount of money, but it's also, you know, we're trying to spur innovation. You know, this also contains our commuter assistance programs, which are always sort of on the edge, trying to get people out of their cars to use, you know, to use other modes of transportation. So, you know, this is one of those small but mighty programs. So, you can see kind of where we invest in those. So, Jayla, next slide, please. So the Transit Ridership Incentive Program, this was something that, when the 5-letter word COVID came up, this was sort of something that was changed dramatically by that. This was going to go towards a certain thing, but when COVID caused people to stay home and not be going to work anymore, it kind of changed the whole trajectory of this program. But it's definitely been in a positive way. So you see the number of projects. This takes about 6% of the allocation that we get. So, and you can see the state funding there that's being put towards this year. So, some other legislative changes have led to other things being funded by the program. Passenger amenities, you can see, is a huge thing with the equity focus and the increased ridership we are looking at. And when we say amenities, we mean shelters, transfer centers, benches, trash cans, so the people waiting for the bus and using transit have the dignity and that incentivizes them to ride as well. So that has been a huge positive change. So we look forward to continue to use that. So we thank you all for pushing for those legislative changes and the legislature and administration for making this happen. Thank you. This is an even smaller, mightier program. But again, we leverage some of our funds here at DRPT to match some of these funds, but mostly we are able to work with the small agencies to provide, desperate transportation to those that don't drive, whether it be the senior or disabled that need the mobility. And so, this is a lot of management, but it's something we are proud to do this program and the folks we work with on this. This is a small amount of funding, but it gets tremendous benefits to all of your districts, and we love funding this program. Okay, so next steps, as we've been, so we'll continue to refine our prioritization of the projects and get together the draft SIP. And so we'll be presenting that over the next,
And it's fair to say we have more requests across the board than we have funding. We always do.
Yeah. So, and when we continue to our funding estimates they can change some. So we're continuing to refine that to see what we'll finally arrive at. So, some of the COVID funding is still working its way through a little bit. So we're just working on refining those as well. But that is your baseline this year that you can expect to look at. So with that, I think that is it.
Zach, it is correct to believe that the majority of this money is vehicle related.
It is. The SDR especially helps to fund replacement vehicles. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Transit is still vehicle heavy. Facilities have become a larger part of some things, and that's because a lot of facilities are reaching their useful life after being built a couple of decades ago or whatever. So we're seeing a larger portion of those coming in, but certainly vehicle and stuff related is the biggest thing. Thank you.
Go back to the operating system merits, one of your earlier slides, is number 4. Thinking ahead to V-Trans discussions here. Yeah. So those are the performance-based metrics that we use. And it just strikes me that we don't have operating costs per passenger mile in there.
That was a big discussion when these metrics were developed, and that is solely because we do not have a good data set.
Is that an evolving data set? It'd be a very useful tool for a board to look at, and it's an easy one.
It is not an easy one. When you think about a broad spec, it would be very helpful for us to be able to assess. But in terms of collecting that information, we don't have that when you look across 40 systems that are very different. And, when you tap in, tap out, like on the metro system, it's very easy to get that. When you buy a ticket on VRE and you're going from this zone to that zone, very easy to get that. Same with, OmniRide and these long haul commuter services. But when you've got smaller systems that don't collect that type of data, they just know somebody gets on, they don't know where they get off. We do very, very high level estimates of passenger miles traveled. So we can give you a number, but it's based on a lot of estimates, and it certainly shouldn't be used to allocate funding.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Makes sense. All right, so next up, we're going to do the same thing with the rail program. We're setting the stage to just say we've got some hard decisions that we're going to have to hard recommendations we're gonna have to make the transit program and bring you a program next month, because Zach touched on it briefly. We saw a lot of money flow into public transit during COVID, whether that was federal relief funding. We saw uplift at the state level as well. We saw kind of this bubble in the transit funding programs that are all driven percentage-wise out by code. We're now seeing that kind of level back on. And so want to make sure that drive that point kind of that there's going to be some tough decisions in what that transit program looks like. Same with rail. So Emily, go and give us an update on the railroad.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thanks for having me. I think I know most of you in the room, Emily Stock, Chief of Rail, and I'll be talking about our rail applications for FY25 in preparation for the 6-year improvement program. And go to the next slide. So I'll do a rail program overview, and then we'll look at the applications that we've gotten and do a little analysis of those. So our rail program overview, focusing on our freight programs. We do have 3 freight programs that are managed by the folks in this room. We have Linda Balderson here, who focuses on rail industrial access and rail preservation program. And then, there's Mike Todd over there, who you hear from quite a bit at CTB meetings talking about our rail industrial access program. I'm not going to be talking about rail industrial access this morning, though, because those applications come in on a rolling basis, and that's why you hear from him about those. Those come to the Commonwealth Transportation Board on a rolling basis, so you'll be hearing from him next month, and also later today about that grant program and a potential increase in the project total. And Mike also manages the freight program for us. So the freight program and the rail preservation program are the programs for which we accept applications during our grant season. So which is closed in February, and we are reviewing applications for those 2 programs right now, and that's what I'll be talking about today. So the freight program, the purpose of this grant program is to increase network capacity. There is a benefit cost analysis that's required for applicants, and most of our applicants are railroads. The Port of Virginia also sometimes submits applications. We require also that 30% design is submitted for projects when folks apply. We want to make sure, especially now, that projects have realistic cost estimates. That's very important now more than ever with the inflation issues the way that they are. And we also want to make sure that we have ready to go projects. So having that 30% design requirement is important. Even though we don't have a match requirement from grantees, we have experienced about a 33% average match from the applicants over the course of the life of this grant, from FY23 to the current year FY25 from the applicants that we've seen so far. And the carload commitment that we've seen come out of this program is about 44,000 over the course of that period as well, which is the equivalent of 1.5 million trucks. Yes, sir.
Percentage of those applications are by CSX,
most of these, because they're bigger projects, are Class 1s and the Port of Virginia. I don't have a breakdown in my head. It's possible Mike knows that off the top of his head.
Not by percentage of total of requests. We've had 2 Norfolk Southern visitors, and then we have 3 Port of Virginia projects. Program.
Yes, sir.
Generically, what these projects look like, and what do it what?
So these are larger projects. So they can be related to transload facilities. They can be related to increasing capacity at the port. So it can be a rail yard enhancement. And we can talk a little bit. Mike, do you have some good examples? I have a couple of examples I can talk about from this year as I go through them. But yeah, hopefully that gives you a little bit of a flavor. Sometimes it's a siding project, so to add capacity to the network, so that trains can pass one another.
I think I have a reasonably good understanding of the industrial access program, but I don't have one of what we're doing here.
Does it apply to signal system updates and upgrades?
If it adds capacity to the network, it can. Yes. And actually that's a good point, because what I hear, especially now, for many years, our REF program, which this is the new version of the Rail Enhancement Fund program that we had for many years. And now this is our freight program that focuses on freight. Before we funded passenger rail and freight rail through the same program, that Rail Enhancement Fund. But we were funding a lot of double stack projects for Norfolk Southern's network and CSX's network. And those projects are finished. They both have double stack networks. We all see the results of that as we're driving around the Commonwealth. So as those mega projects have finished up, some of the infrastructure projects that we're seeing it's more about maximizing the network that's already there, the infrastructure that's already there. And so sometimes technology is a bigger part of that. So I expect that we're going to see more of that, honestly, and less of the hard infrastructure.
So Emily, back 10 years ago, Norfolk Southern did a massive project to improve tunnels to accommodate double stack trains.
Yes. Crescent Corridor. That was REF. Those were REF funds. So Rail Enhancement Funds.
Which is what? REF, what?
Rail Enhancement Fund.
State or federal?
State.
State. So the state paid some of that tunnel work so you could do double stack trains across the state.
Correct. We partnered with Norfolk Southern on some of those projects. Correct.
So is the Heartland Corridor on REF?
Partially.
So they did not have a compelling business case of their own to do that work.
I wouldn't say that.
They
we partnered with them and keeping
stuff like that.
And that's healthy. And that's why we require a benefit cost analysis for all of these projects. And I will remind you that REF program was also looked at benefits to passenger rail. And now that we have a separate passenger rail agency, we have VPRA, we are separated, but these benefits for freight rail are also enjoyed by passenger rail trains because we share the same tracks.
Emily, is it fair to say that before in the REF, we didn't have as robust benefit cost analysis? Is that a fair statement?
I don't know. I don't think so. And that is something that Mike might have more experience with, since he had experience in both programs. But you think that it was not as robust?
No.
Or I think it.
Well, it wasn't as robust in the sense that we've improved over the years, but we had the benefit cost analysis for sure. We ran it on every single project. It did take into account both freight and passenger benefits, like Emily said. We have added some, additional categories and criteria to it to make it more sophisticated, but it's at its core still the same level for better.
Okay.
Benefit to whom?
So the previous BCA did take that passenger side more into account than the current. And I'm happy to talk with you dig into the BCA in more detail.
you know, if the benefit is to the Commonwealth, that's one thing. If the benefit is to the shareholders of the railroad,
Keep
I
in,
have some
keep in
concern
mind,
about that.
historically, there were a lot of these projects that were done to open up corridors for passenger rail, benefit the freight railroad so that we could then open up corridors for passenger rail, like opening up the corridor to Roanoke. The same thing can be said for the freight program really benefiting the Port of Virginia, which obviously benefits the Commonwealth. And so when you look at that slate of projects, the majority of them are really pivot off the Port of Virginia, including giving funding directly to the ports.
And to the extent it gets traffic off the highways, that is a direct benefit to the Commonwealth.
Yes.
Yes, pavement maintenance fees pavement maintenance cost savings is a big part of the VCA.
Right, so we're gonna move on just because we still have one more presentation to go after this one. So can you go into rail preservation?
Absolutely. So rail preservation, the purpose of this program is state of good repair for short line railroads, also known as class 3 railroads. These railroads offer last mile connections and flexibility for industries in Virginia. They require smaller volume minimums, and it gets more industries in the door on the track, so to speak. 30% match is required for these grants. And over the last 3 years, over 2,000 miles of railroad track have been kept in a state of good repair as a result of this program. We can move ahead. So this is our application dashboard. We're going to move in and out so that you can see a little bit better. We can start with the map, so we can go to the next. Or we'll start with the number of applications. We've gotten 14 applications this year, 5 freight applications, 9 rail preservation applications. Next slide. And they have been distributed around the state, but definitely in the Hampton Roads region, we've gotten some rail preservation. And the dark blue is are the freight projects. And as you can see, those rail preservation program applications are more linear. They're corridor applications because they're state of good repair types of projects that are replacing railroad ties in many cases to keep those railroad tracks in a state of good repair, whereas the freight projects are more localized. And that's our Hampton Roads inset. And this, again, these are the applications, not necessarily the projects that we're selecting. And it's pretty well split between the two programs, the freight program and the rail preservation program, in terms of the cost of the projects that are applied for, a total of almost 76 million, about 40 million for each program. And even though the freight program does not require a match, we still do see that our applicants are offering a match. The projects that offer a match do score higher on the BCA than the ones that don't. But that graphic shows the match that's offered by the applicants. And part of the reason that the freight program has that match split this year, the Norfolk Portsmouth Beltline submitted 2 applications without any matching funds because the projects directly serve the port and have large carload commitments that really drive up that BCA. So you can kind of see how the inner workings function for the BCA for the freight program. But multiple applications focused on short line improvements do directly support the Port of Virginia. So this is an important slide. Getting to the end, this is actually the last slide. We have a lot more requests than we do funding available. And so what we do, this is definitely an art form rather than a science. What Linda and Mike do every year is they're preparing the 6-year improvement program. Our projects, typically our applicants are looking at multi-year projects. They take a long time to build. You saw those corridor long types of state of good repair projects for rail preservation. So even though the request for this year exceeds the amount that's available, we're able to accommodate a lot more than you might expect because these are multi-year projects. And there's money left over in some of the out years that we have set aside so that we can accommodate these multi-year project requests. But it still remains, the fact remains that we don't have enough money for all of the requests that we get. So we look at the BCA, of course, but we also make sure that our applicants are prioritizing their highest priority projects for the rail preservation program, especially. And but we do have to go through a priority setting exercise with our applicants every year and make sure that the best applications are the ones that we are asking for funding for every time we come to the CTB for a 6-year improvement program request. So yes.
So a conversation we've had on multiple occasions in past meetings, trying to get simple metrics for the board to understand progress or lack of progress or change in numbers. We've talked about tracking originating and terminating carloads in Virginia. And in the past, that's been a number that we've not been able to capture or gather. Are we any closer to being able to look at something as fundamental as originating and terminating carloads? We talked about number of active switches. We talked about this. I note that the Wall Street Journal reports every week on the actual number of carloads with a seeming high degree of precision. They call it car loadings. And I just wonder if there's a database somewhere that will give us access to that, if it's not something that we can gather from the information that we have. I think it would help this board to understand that we increased the number of cars that were loaded in Virginia by 10%, or the number of cars that were terminated in Virginia by 10 or 15%. That would be the real sign of progress for the overall freight program. I mean, I guess we really don't care about throughput. We have a lot of trains that transit through the Commonwealth, bringing goods to other parts of the country, but we do care about originating and terminating carloads. And if there's a fundamental metric that I think would benefit us, even in our VTrans discussion, it would be an important one.
Mm-hmm. So that's something that we do look at, with VTrans and in our rail plan through our Transurge data. And so we do have it as part of the rail plan, but I am interested in, the most up-to-date data. So I'm happy to look into that and so that we can report it more often.
Yeah, perhaps report back, even if it's not formally in this committee within the next month or so, the number of pending decisions that this board needs to move with. That information would be very helpful. That's a bedrock statistic that tells us if we're improving, staying static, or if we're declining.
Sure.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Great. Last presentation for today at Avery Dartrey, who's our statewide program manager for many things, but including the Virginia Breeze. So.
Well, good morning. It is a pleasure to be here this morning. I often like taking a field trip and getting out of the office, and it is a privilege also to oversee this program. It is a real privilege. My name's Avery Darty. Today I'll be talking about some work that's been conducted over the past several months that looks closely at intercity bus needs along the 64 corridor. Slide. Just a brief overview. The Virginia Breeze bus lines was first launched in December of 2017 and was meant to provide a crucial service to underserved rural communities along the I-81 corridor. Today, the Virginia Breeze operates 365 days a year and consists of 4 routes connecting the New River Valley, Shenandoah Valley, Southern Virginia Racing Region, Southern and Central Piedmont Region, and the Highlands Region, all to Washington, D.C. It is funded through the Federal Transit Administration's Intercity Bus Program. Through farebox revenue we receive from ticket sales and from funds, VDOT's I-81 improvement funding, which is intended to enhance service and bus stop amenities along the I-81 corridor. And just wanted to mention, we have contracted Dillon's bus service, which is a subsidiary of Coach USA and Megabus, to operate our service turnkey. So some may be familiar with what intercity bus is, but for those that aren't as familiar, intercity bus, according to the FTA, Federal Transit Administration, is defined as service that stops in rural communities with limited access to connected transportation options. Service has to be designed in a way to enhance, which Jennifer mentioned earlier, the National Intercity Bus Network, by providing meaningful connections, meaning ones that are realistic for passengers to be able to connect to and to take and not substantially wait. Intercity bus must also allow space for passengers' baggage and consist of a fixed route with a fixed schedule and travel a long distance. And so what you're seeing on the screen here is a service map of our current Virginia Breeze intercity bus routes. The line in pink represents the Valley Flyer, the original route connecting Blacksburg to DC. The turquoise route, it's a little difficult with the green but the one in the middle, originating in Danville, stretches along the US 29 corridor connecting to DC. The line in purple is the Capital Connector route, which connects Martinsville to Richmond, and then from Richmond it heads straight to DC. And then the green line, which is all the way to your left there, originates in Bristol and was an extension or expansion for I-81 service, connecting Bristol all the way to Washington, DC. And as you can see, all the routes run north to south and vice versa. So a vision that the DRPT has had for intercity bus service really has been looking at how to bridge an east-west connection, specifically Tidewater region to the Shenandoah Valley. So how we did this, or looking to see what our needs are, is by launching an intercity bus needs assessment. And this is what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about today. We're actually required by the Federal Transit Administration to conduct these needs assessments on a regular basis. I will say that Virginia has been viewed somewhat on a national level as kind of a pioneering industry leader for intercity bus in the last 6 years, creating its own rather successful brand and successfully launching new service. Since 2017, we've led the efforts to conduct several needs assessment studies that have highlighted unmet need throughout the Commonwealth. And this latest study was kicked off in September of 2023 and focused again on the Interstate 64 corridor from the Shenandoah Valley to the Virginia Beach Tidewater region. So quickly, in order to receive intercity bus funding from the FTA and remain in compliance, it's required that that states regularly conduct these assessments to determine if there is any unmet need, which I will talk about us having. So the next slide, please. Okay, so as part of the latest intercity bus needs assessment, we contracted a consultant firm, KFH, to look closely at existing private intercity bus service, demographic data from the census, and potentially connect to unsubsidized service providers. As part of this analysis, to determine unmet intercity need along the 64 corridor, we did receive valuable feedback, which I'm going to talk about in a second here, of the needs of communities through stakeholder meetings, public survey questionnaires, to residents along this corridor. Route alternatives and cost estimates were developed as part of this project, with the final report anticipated being completed in the next few months, or excuse me, in a few weeks. All right, next slide. So quickly on the stakeholder engagement piece, as I mentioned a moment ago, this is really pivotal for the assessment to really understand what we are needing and what the Commonwealth really hopes to have in terms of service. So we had stakeholders identified, which included local public transportation providers, regional MPOs and TPOs, business owners, municipalities, universities, chambers of commerce, regional tourism offices. The list kind of goes on, but it was very comprehensive. A series of 3 stakeholder meetings were conducted in late fall 2023, as well as the development of a stakeholder survey and general public survey, through which we asked participants where they would like to see the Virginia Breeze expand. Through these engagements, we had nearly 1,400 participants. As you can see on the graph to the right, over 90% of participants wanted to see service connecting Richmond to Charlottesville, And then between Richmond and Charlottesville was identified as being really one of the highest priority areas for this new service. Nearly 3/4 of participants would like to see the service stretch to Virginia Beach. And on the list of stops for expanded East-West Virginia Breeze service, you can see them being of really the highest percentage. 100% of respondents in our engagement indicated that there was a vast need for intercity bus service to run east-west along the 64 corridor, and nearly 2/3 wanted to see bi-directional service daily round trip. Slide, please. Just kind of glossing over a little bit of this real quick with population density. There's several factors that are looked at with this study. Could probably consume the entire meeting on it, but I did just want to highlight a few. Population density was one of the biggest areas we wanted to focus on to see what would be successful. So we looked at various demographic data. And again, one of these, you can see the corridor highlighted in or circled, focused really with this area in proximity to existing bus stop, intercity bus stops. That shaded gray area is the existence of or connecting to existing intercity bus service. And then the darker color areas represent population density, with the darker obviously being the heavier density. Next slide. And then another one I wanted to highlight was areas of interest. This could be where passengers might like to travel to and from the most, which are represented by the different color shapes. Again, these are places that would attract riders and we thought generate trips, which included state-owned facilities, colleges and universities, education centers, places of recreation, military sites, and medical facilities. Next slide, please. This is where I wanted to spend a big bulk of my presentation discussing with you today. On the screen are the two alternatives that we've really kind of narrowed down and honed in on. So we began examining several alternatives in this study and have really narrowed it down to these two. The primary difference between alternative 1 and alternative 2 is how the bus would travel from Richmond to Hampton Roads. Essentially, everything west of Richmond for both alternatives remains the same. And both alternatives would also have bi-directional service daily. Alternative 1 would travel from Virginia Beach with stops in Norfolk, Newport News, Williamsburg, New Kent, Richmond International Airport, Richmond Main Street Station, Charlottesville, Crozet, Waynesboro, Stanton, and Harrisonburg. And we have estimated that the annual ridership would be around 18,000 and would cost approximately $506,000 annually to operate. Alternative 2 would start in Virginia Beach and would stop in Norfolk. But here's where this alternative really differs from the first, whereby it would stop in Suffolk, Petersburg, then Richmond Main Street Station, Richmond Staples Mill train station, and then Charlottesville, Crozet, Waynesboro, Stanton, and Harrisonburg. And it's estimated that our annual ridership here would be a little lower for this alternative, with around 16,000 to begin with, and cost our net operating cost to operate would be a little bit more, mainly because of lower anticipated fare box revenue at $572,700. Next slide, please.
When you say net, you mean net of fare?
Yes, sir. Okay. Yes. So that would be the state's cost or requirement. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Operating cost.
Operating cost. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Just a question on that, related to my earlier question I asked. Is the Virginia Breeze a facility that we could get an accurate cost per passenger mile as a comparative metric?
Yes, sir. We have.
Because you buy tickets based on point to point. So that would be a very helpful metric to look at going forward.
Absolutely.
I'm kind of just staggered by the relatively low numbers. The cost to add that service for 16,000 to 18,000 riders is extraordinary.
Yes, sir. Yes, we do have that collected monthly. It is also something we're working to have on our new data portal as a
Cost per passenger mile.
Yes, sir. And we have cost per mile. We have a lot of different metrics. So we have to share.
And is this for one round trip or two round trips?
This would be for 2 round trips. So essentially east and then a west. So we would be 2 buses for this route.
Okay, so one would originate in the west and one would
Yes,
originate
ma'am.
in the east. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
So quickly, just wrapping up with next steps. We will plan to program or recommend for programming funding in the FY25 SIP in April, using a combination of federal 5311 funds for intercity bus and trip funding. We are planning on identifying and announcing the preferred route alternative in May, and will shortly thereafter hope to begin procurement for the new route in August 2024, pending the CTB board approval on this. And this would lead us to target launching the new service somewhere we anticipate spring to summer of 2025. Yes, sir.
Have you estimated the travel time from Virginia Beach to Harrisonburg with the stops in the 2 routes?
We have, and they're part of this study, although the stops themselves are to be refined. So it's really just kind of a framework design. So we have some general ideas, but I think there's more work that we're going to be moving into planning to be able to provide an accurate
Preliminary estimate.
So what we're estimating somewhere around is between from Virginia Beach to Harrisonburg. Actually, I would like to follow up and give you an accurate number on that. I feel like I'm going to give you something that may be incorrect. But I'd be
On the television.
There's a lot of construction east of Richmond.
Yeah, I mean, it does.
Yeah.
That could make all the difference.
And then you got the 64, go through the 64 gap as well.
Oh, yeah.
So is travel time about the same between the 2 alternatives?
It's going to be a little bit more for the Petersburg suburb option, and some more miles, which also adds that additional cost.
Overnight.
Not
One last question, if you can track passenger cost per mile, because then I imagine with the similarity of the buses, that you could track carbon emission reductions per passenger mile as well.
So we have that as well for greenhouse gas.
Those are great stats.
Absolutely. Yes.
Good. Reprogram.
Thank you.
Well
So
done.
I will put one pin in the last slide. I said earlier that we had never put state money in. So this recommendation will include some state money out of the trip program. So that is because we're not making that connection to DC, that is to cover us on the match side. And ensure that we don't get in a bind for this anytime in line.
If you have, from the stakeholder questionnaires, do you have any idea whether or not this is more leisure travel or economic and employment?
That's a great question. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to real quick. So we survey periodically. We haven't done one recently, but we've surveyed riders in the past. And it's a combination of student travel, business, and leisure. And I want to point out, Miriam Foster manages our marketing program for Virginia Breeze, and we just picked up our 2nd national award for the marketing as tied to ridership for this program. So that's also managed in-house, and lots of really cool creative that goes with this, along with the branding. It's a very unique amongst state service.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I make one comment? It relates back to one of the previous conversations about the Heartland corridor and the expense of tunneling and expanding the tunnels so that you would double stack. If it had not been for that, one of the nemesis of the port is and continues to be is that most of the cargo originates outside the Commonwealth. One of the biggest corridors for the Port of Virginia is the Midwest. If those tunnels had not been expanded, it was expensive, and I get that. We would have lost cargo percentage to Baltimore, New York, to a great extent, to almost eliminate that 35% of the cargo that comes through the Port of Hampton roads goes to the Midwest. So it wasn't, the cost per mile was improved tremendously with that Heartland corridor expansion. But I know that there's some skepticism, but it was a drive by the port. It wasn't Norfolk Southern. they really could care less.
I had the honor of signing that contract.
It was great. It was great.
All right, so with that, we will, our next subcommittee meeting will be in June. This will be my last subcommittee meeting. But our next subcommittee meeting will be in June.
You might want to update that photo to show the current director of URPT.
Well, I am in there.
I
But
know,
the
but-
previous director
But
is in there
previous
too.
director.
I'm not a fan of that because I'm wearing a boot.
Yeah.
And it's less than fashionable.
And remember one thing, it doesn't, it does not have a chance.
They have ground.
You had that up.
You can tell we're not in the